I was riding a late-night train alone when a stranger sat beside me. He didn't say a word at first. Then he slid a folded piece of paper into my hand. I opened it, and in messy handwriting, it said, "If anyone asks, I'm your brother." My stomach dropped. Before I could even react, the conductor stepped into our car, looked straight at us, and demanded to know something that made my blood run cold. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 25, a graduate student who had been visiting some friends in the city. That night, I was just trying to get home. It was late, almost midnight, and the train car was nearly empty when I boarded. I remember thinking how quiet it felt, just the hum of the train on the tracks and the occasional flicker of lights passing by outside. I chose a window seat, tucked my bag by my side, and leaned my head against the glass. The blur of trees and empty fields rolling past the window made me feel calm, even a little sleepy. My dad's words echoed in the back of my mind, something he had repeated all my life. "Trust your instincts, Emily. They'll keep you alive." My dad, Michael, is a retired police officer, and he never missed a chance to remind me to stay alert, even in ordinary situations. I used to laugh it off, but that night, his words felt heavier than usual. For a while, everything was fine. I texted my younger sister Sophie, who liked to tease me about being too careful. She had joked earlier, "Don't give strangers the evil eye just because they sit next to you." I smiled, remembering her message as the train rattled on, feeling just a little braver being on my own. Then, at the next stop, the doors opened with a hiss, and a man stepped into the car. He was in his late 20s, rugged, tired-looking, and carrying no bags. I thought nothing of it until he walked past rows of empty seats and sat down right next to me. My stomach tightened. There were at least 20 open seats, but he chose mine. I tried to act normal, staring out the window, clutching the strap of my bag. Then, without a word, he slipped a folded note onto my lap. My first thought was that it was a mistake, something meant for someone else. But when I opened it, the words hit me like a shock. "If anyone asks, I'm your brother." I turned my head slowly to look at him, my throat dry. He didn't smile, didn't explain. His eyes scanned the train nervously, like he was waiting for something or someone. And that's when I heard footsteps. The door at the end of the car slid open, and the conductor walked in, his face stern, his voice sharp as he looked directly at us. The conductor's footsteps echoed against the floor as he walked slowly down the aisle, and every step made my chest tighten. He stopped right in front of us, his eyes sharp and focused. For a moment, he didn't speak, just studied us as if trying to figure out something hidden. Then his voice cut through the air. "Is this man with you?" My throat went dry. I gripped the note tighter in my palm. The words burned into my mind. "If anyone asks, I'm your brother." The stranger beside me didn't move, didn't breathe, just kept his eyes forward like he had rehearsed this moment. I opened my mouth to answer, but no sound came out. My heart hammered so loudly I was afraid the conductor could hear it. I felt trapped between two impossible choices. If I said no, I risked exposing myself to whatever danger this man had been trying to protect me from. But if I said yes, I'd be lying to an authority figure and tying myself to a stranger I didn't know or trust. The conductor's voice grew firmer. "Miss, I asked you a question. Is he traveling with you?" Before I could find my voice, the man leaned slightly toward me, his words barely more than a whisper. "Please, just go along. You don't understand, but you will. Trust me." His tone wasn't threatening. It was desperate. That desperation made my skin crawl. I thought of my dad, always warning me about trusting strangers. I thought of my sister Sophie, laughing when she told me I worried too much. And here I was, caught between my instinct to run and a strange pull to believe him. My hands trembled in my lap, and the silence stretched. Finally, I managed to croak out, "He's my brother." The words didn't feel like my own, but they seemed to satisfy the conductor for the moment. He frowned, asked for our tickets, and stood there as the man, Daniel, as I would later learn, handed his over with unsteady hands. I quickly showed mine, praying my nervousness didn't give me away. The conductor studied both for longer than necessary. His eyes flicked from Daniel to me, then back again, as if he could sense the unease hanging between us. At last, he gave a slow nod, returned the tickets, and moved on to the next row. The air left my lungs in a shaky rush, but relief didn't come. If anything, the fear had grown stronger. I turned to the stranger, my voice low and harsh. "What is going on? Why did you make me lie?" He leaned closer, his eyes darting to the back of the car. "Because they're watching me, and if they think I'm alone, they'll act. But if they believe I'm with family, they'll hesitate." Confused, I followed his gaze. That's when I noticed them. Two men sitting farther back, both in dark jackets, both staring directly at us. Their expressions were blank, but their eyes were fixed on Daniel with unnerving focus. I quickly looked away, my pulse racing. My voice shook as I whispered, "Who are they?" "I don't know exactly," Daniel admitted, "but they got on at the last station and they haven't taken their eyes off me since. I've seen this before. They're not just curious passengers." He rubbed his palms nervously on his jeans. "I needed you to play along so they think twice before trying something." His explanation sounded insane, but the men's piercing stares felt real enough to make my skin prickle. I sat frozen, unsure whether to push him away or lean closer. Every instinct screamed at me that I was in danger, but I couldn't decide whether the danger came from him or the men at the back of the train. My dad's words echoed again, "Trust your instincts." But my instincts were at war with each other. Part of me wanted to stand up, walk away, and tell the conductor the truth. The other part whispered that if I did, I might draw even more attention and put myself directly in the path of those men. The train rocked gently as it sped through the darkness outside. The lights flickered once, and in that split second of dimness, I felt like the walls of the car had closed in. When the lights steadied again, the two men were still watching, their faces unreadable. Daniel lowered his voice further, almost pleading now. "Please, just act normal. If we keep this up until the next stop, I'll explain everything. I just need to get there in one piece." I sat stiffly, my nails digging into the fabric of my seat. Normal. That word sounded impossible when every muscle in my body was screaming to run. But running wasn't an option. Not yet. I nodded weakly, though my mind screamed questions I couldn't ask. The conductor had disappeared into the next car, leaving us exposed. The two men at the back adjusted their seats, leaning forward just slightly, and that was enough to make me shiver. I turned back toward the window, pretending to stare at the passing darkness, but inside I knew the night had shifted. This wasn't just a train ride anymore. Something was happening, something dangerous, and I was right in the middle of it. The longer I sat there, the more trapped I felt. My whole body was tense, as if my muscles couldn't decide whether to run or fight. The train rocked gently beneath us, but every movement, every sound, felt sharp and deliberate. Daniel sat rigid beside me, his eyes fixed straight ahead, his jaw tight. I could sense the fear rolling off him, but it wasn't just fear, it was calculation, as though he was already working through the next move. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why me?" I whispered sharply, keeping my face turned toward the window. "Why drag me into this?" His voice was quiet but steady. "Because you were the only one sitting alone. If I looked like I had someone with me, they'd think twice. They prey on people they can isolate." His words made my stomach twist. Prey, that was how he described it. I wanted to reject what he was saying, to tell him he was paranoid or imagining things. But deep down, I knew he was right. Those two men hadn't just been watching him. They had been watching me too, measuring how close I was, how much attention I was paying. I pressed my hands together, trying to stop the shaking. My dad's voice rang in my head again. "Trust your instincts." My instincts told me I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, something that could change in an instant. "Listen," Daniel whispered, lowering his voice even further. "We have to make it until the next stop. If they think you're my sister, they won't risk doing anything in front of a crowd. But if you panic, if you walk away, they'll know I'm alone. And that's when it gets bad." I turned to him, my voice trembling. "Why are they after you? What did you do?" He shook his head, glancing over his shoulder for the briefest moment. I'll explain when we're safe. Right now, all you need to know is that they're dangerous, and if they get the chance, they'll corner me. Or worse, us. That last word sent a jolt of fear through me. Us. By choosing to sit there, by letting him pull me into his plan, I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was part of it. I thought about Sophie, my little sister, always rolling her eyes when I double-checked the locks or walked away from strangers who got too close. She'd call me dramatic if she could see me now, sitting stiff as a board on a dark train, pretending a stranger was my brother. But this wasn't drama. It was survival. The train rattled through another tunnel, and for a moment the lights flickered again. My breath caught. When the glow steadied, I risked a glance toward the back of the car. The two men were leaning forward now, their heads bent together, whispering. My chest tightened. Whatever they were planning, it wasn't good. I turned back quickly, clutching the strap of my bag, and whispered to Daniel, "All right, I'll play along. But the second anything feels wrong, I'm calling for help." Relief flickered across his face, but it was gone in an instant. He gave a small nod. "That's all I need. Just stick with me." It wasn't much, but it was a decision. For the first time since the note landed in my hand, I felt like I had taken control of something, even if it was small. I had made a choice, not to walk away, not to expose him, but to step into the unknown alongside him. The car went quiet again, except for the steady hum of the engine. I shifted closer to the window, forcing myself to look calm, as if this was just a normal trip with my brother. Daniel sat straighter, adjusting his coat, trying to look casual too. We both knew it was an act, but sometimes an act is what keeps you alive. When the conductor returned, checking the rows once more, I forced a smile and said, "We're fine, thank you." My voice cracked slightly, but the words came out steady enough. The conductor gave us one last long look before moving on. My pulse hammered, but I hadn't given us away. Daniel exhaled quietly, almost like he had been holding his breath the entire time. He leaned just close enough to whisper, "Good, keep doing that. We're almost there." I nodded, staring straight ahead, my palms slick with sweat. I had no idea what "almost there" meant, or what would happen when the train slowed for the next station, but I knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now. In that moment, the decision was sealed. I wasn't just a passenger anymore. I was part of the story, tied to a stranger whose secret had already pulled me into something far bigger than a train ride home. And whatever came next, I had chosen to face it with him. The minutes after I decided to play along stretched on endlessly. Each second felt heavier than the last, as though the air in the train car had thickened. I tried to keep my breathing steady, to look casual, to play the part of a sister sitting quietly beside her brother on a late-night ride. But my palms were damp, and my grip on the strap of my bag was so tight my knuckles had gone pale. The train rattled forward into another long tunnel, and this time, the flicker of lights was longer. In the momentary dimness, my stomach churned. When the fluorescent glow returned, I saw movement. The two men at the back were no longer sitting. They were walking slowly down the aisle toward us. My pulse spiked. I leaned closer to Daniel, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're coming." He didn't look at me. His jaw clenched, and he gave the faintest nod. "Stay calm. Let me handle it. Don't let them see you panic." But my body had already betrayed me. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure the entire car could hear it. My legs trembled as I pressed my knees together, trying not to shake. The two men moved with purpose, their eyes locked on Daniel. Their faces gave nothing away, but their presence alone was enough to draw the attention of other passengers. I could see people shifting in their seats, whispering, sensing that something wasn't right. When they finally reached our row, the taller one stopped directly in front of us. He leaned down slightly, his voice low and sharp. "Get up, now." My throat closed. I felt Daniel stiffen beside me, but he didn't move. He simply reached out and placed a steadying hand on my arm, as if anchoring me to the seat. "We're not going anywhere," he said firmly. The shorter man's eyes flicked to me. His stare made my skin crawl, as if he was calculating whether I was a problem or just background noise. "Is this your sister?" he asked coldly. Every muscle in my body screamed to scream, but Daniel squeezed my arm gently, a silent reminder. I swallowed hard and forced myself to nod. Yes, I'm his sister. My voice shook, but I said it loud enough for the surrounding passengers to hear. The taller man's lip curled slightly, as though he didn't believe me. He reached forward and grabbed Daniel's jacket, yanking him halfway out of his seat. The sudden movement made my mom's words from years ago echo in my head. Never freeze if someone touches you. Without thinking, I jumped up, my voice cutting across the car. Leave my brother alone. The sound startled even me. It rang louder than I expected, bouncing off the walls of the train. Heads turned. Passengers gasped. Some stood halfway, unsure of what to do, but knowing something was terribly wrong. The conductor appeared again at the far end of the car, his face hardening as he saw the scene. "What's going on here?" he demanded. The taller man released Daniel quickly, muttering, "It's nothing, just a misunderstanding." But the conductor didn't look convinced. He stepped closer, holding out his hand. "Tickets, both of you." For a moment, the men froze. That pause was all the proof anyone needed. They had no tickets, no right to be there. The shorter one tried to bluster, reaching into his pocket as if to stall, but the conductor's eyes narrowed. "Security will meet us at the next station," he said firmly. The tension cracked like glass. The taller man hissed under his breath, clearly frustrated. He glared at Daniel one last time, then at me, his stare so sharp it made me shiver. But with more eyes watching now, with the conductor standing firm, they had no choice but to back off. They retreated down the aisle, muttering to each other. The conductor followed closely, his walk brisk, his hand never leaving the radio clipped to his belt. Daniel slumped back in his seat, his shoulders finally lowering a fraction. I sat down again too, my whole body trembling. My voice shook as I whispered, "What would have happened if I hadn't said that?" Daniel's eyes met mine. For the first time since he'd sat down beside me, I saw gratitude there, mixed with exhaustion. "Then they would have taken me," he said quietly. "And once they had me, you would have been next." The train slowed as it approached the next station, the screech of the brakes filling the silence. Through the window, I saw uniformed security waiting on the platform. The doors slid open, and the two men were forced off by the conductor. Security surrounded them quickly, their protests drowned out by the sounds of the busy station. As the train doors shut again and we pulled away, I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My hands still trembled, my heart still raced, but the immediate danger was gone. Daniel leaned back against the seat, staring at the floor. "You saved me," he said softly. "I don't know how to thank you." I shook my head, still trying to calm down. "Just tell me the truth when we're safe." And for the first time since this began, he gave a small, tired smile. When the train finally rolled into my stop, I felt like I was walking on unsteady legs. The air outside was cold, biting against my face as I stepped onto the platform. I pulled my jacket tighter, still trembling from everything that had happened. Daniel stepped off the train too, though he lingered farther down, his shoulders hunched, his eyes darting around as though he was still expecting danger to follow. For a moment, I thought he might say something more. I even considered asking him to explain everything, to tell me who those men were and why they had been after him. But instead, he simply met my eyes, gave me the faintest nod of gratitude, and walked away into the night. I stood there watching until he disappeared into the crowd. Part of me wanted to chase after him, but another part knew that maybe I didn't want the full truth. Some things were terrifying enough in fragments. As I walked toward the station exit, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. "Call me when you get in. Don't make me worry." For the first time that night, I let out a shaky laugh, though it was more out of relief than humor. Dad had always told me to trust my instincts, and tonight, those instincts had kept me alive. When I reached the parking lot, my parents were already waiting for me. My mom rushed forward, wrapping me in a hug so tight it almost knocked the air out of me. My dad's eyes scanned my face, his expression sharp, like he could read the fear still clinging to me. "What happened?" he asked quietly. I didn't know how to tell them everything without sounding unbelievable, but I tried. I explained about the note, about Daniel, about the two men and the confrontation with the conductor. My mom's hand flew to her mouth more than once, her eyes wide with shock. My dad didn't interrupt, but his jaw tightened with every detail. By the time I finished, his voice was low and serious. You did the right thing. You stayed alert. You trusted yourself. On the ride home, I sat in the back seat, staring out at the passing lights. My mom kept glancing at me in the mirror, whispering prayers under her breath, while my dad drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I felt like I had aged years in just one night. At home, my younger sister Sophie was waiting. She ran up to me in her pajamas, her face pale with worry. "You scared us," she said, her voice shaky. I was about to call every police station in the county. I managed a weak smile. "Guess I was right to be careful, huh?" Her eyes softened, and for once, she didn't tease me. She just hugged me tightly, whispering, "Don't ever scare me like that again." Later, lying in my own bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything. The note in my hand, the conductor's sharp question, the men standing over us, my own voice shouting, "Leave my brother alone." Every detail played back in my mind like a movie I couldn't shut off. My body was safe, but my thoughts were restless. What haunted me most was how quickly it all happened. One moment, I was just a tired student heading home, and the next, I was part of someone else's dangerous story. It reminded me that danger doesn't always announce itself with flashing lights or loud alarms. Sometimes it hides in the ordinary, in the seat beside you, in the footsteps down the aisle, in the eyes watching from the back of a train car. But there was also a lesson buried in the fear. I had learned that instincts aren't something to ignore or brush off. When my gut told me something was wrong, it was because something was wrong. And when the time came to act, I found a voice I didn't know I had. It wasn't polished, it wasn't calm, but it was enough to draw attention, enough to shift the balance, enough to protect me. In the days after, I carried that lesson with me everywhere. I checked my surroundings more carefully, trusted my instincts more fully, and stopped worrying so much about looking paranoid. I realized that safety isn't about pretending danger doesn't exist. It's about being ready to face it when it does. That night on the train changed me. It showed me that one choice, whether to trust a stranger, whether to shout for help, whether to act, can mean the difference between danger and safety, between walking away and disappearing into the dark. I'll never forget the way Daniel's eyes looked when he whispered, "Please, just go along." I'll never forget the cold stare of the men who tried to corner us. And I'll never forget the feeling of finally stepping off that train, my heart still racing, but my life still mine. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more true-to-life stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.